She's a member of the Leinenberger Comprehensive Cancer Center, and her unique role allows her to provide autonomous patient-centered care while closely collaborating with internationally recognized providers and researchers there at UNC. And it's really a wonderful thing to have her here. She's been spearheading the Survivorship Task Force at our scientific meeting. And we are really grateful to have Christina Amodi, who is able to pop up. Mary's back there in North Carolina, but Christina is here with us from California. She was able to make it up. She's a nurse practitioner, and she sees all patients with GU surgical oncology, and she specializes in bladder and kidney cancer. She's currently the first NP3, which you're going to have to explain what that means, in the Department of Urology there at the university. So what is an NP3?
It's the longest process I've ever gone through for a promotion. I figured if I don't get it, I'm going to remodel my bathroom. Like, it was just that painful. It's basically a leadership promotion when you're considered to become a clinical expert and within your area of expertise. So my area that I particularly focused on was bladder cancer. And that work started originally with Dr. Seema Porton, who is my fantastic surgeon colleague, and we are attached at the hip. And I'm here because of her initially taking me to Think Tank.
Great.
So the NP3 promotional process, it's a wonderful sort of acknowledgement when your advanced practice provider is working so closely with the community and patients. And each university potentially has their process. You are unfortunately promoted only for 3 years, and then you got to go through the recertification every 3 years that you are keeping up actually the work that you signed up for.
Wow. So that's tough, but it's good. It keeps you on your toes, I guess.
Yes.
But don't worry about it, because we're giving you lots of good opportunities to use those great skills. So Christina was really instrumental in developing a bladder pathway at UCSF pre and post cystectomy. So I hope you found Sarah's talk with Hannah and David
Yes.
a little bit interesting, something useful. She manages the Bladder Cancer Survivorship Clinic and sees complex patients with ostomy-related issues. If you have questions about UTIs, she is the go-to person. I know she does a lot of that. She's done webinars for us about that. She's a nursing and board member of UCSF's Advanced Practice Advisory Board. I think I'm getting a little tired here.
That's okay.
And she precepts students from the School of Nursing and Advanced Practice Fellows through the Cancer Center. As a single mom, I don't know how you do it. You really live up to, all of you do, is if you want something done, you ask a busy woman, and that's how it gets done, because that's how BCAN works. We have some very busy women that we work with, and it's wonderful, so thank you.
International Women's Day today.
Yeah. And last but not least, I was really thrilled as we were beginning to plan this and reaching out to our colleagues at Fred Hutch. How did you find out about us, Barb? Because you reached out to me.
You know, it was interesting. We had heard about it, and I reached out to Ritu, who's in the audience, and asked about it, and she gave me your connection.
Okay.
Because we didn't want to miss this opportunity to meet all you amazing people.
Right. So I get this email from this woman named Barb, who is a physician's assistant. And she says, yeah, I run the survivorship clinic at the Fred Hutch. I'm like, who knew? This is phenomenal. And so it's really lovely to have a slightly different perspective. Both Mary and Christina are nurse practitioners. Barb is a physician's assistant, and she actually is very instrumental in running the survivorship clinic, which really encompasses all cancer patients.
Yes.
So not just bladder cancer, but everybody at the Fred Hutch. And I think one of the unique things, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit, is that the clinic is open to anybody in the state of Washington, right?
Yep. Anyone that's living in the state of Washington, and you do not have to have been treated at Fred Hutch.
Yeah. Which is awesome. And, you know, I think, if you don't mind my sharing, you bring a unique perspective to the role, because why don't you share what you care to share about your cancer experience?
Well, you know, I feel bladder cancer is crazy, right? Well, I'm stage 3C melanoma, and I was diagnosed with a rare form of melanoma in 2018, and I was given a 60% chance to live 5 years. My family thought it was crazy when I went home and said, I'm 3C, I'm 3C. And they're like, what are you talking about? I go, I get immunotherapy. So I knew if I was 2D or less, I would not qualify for immunotherapy. And after I got my Castle testing that said my chance of recurrence was very, very high, I was so fortunate to be able to get immunotherapy. I did get a recurrence in 2020. I was hit with 2 immunotherapies, ipilimumab at that point, and radiation. And I'm alive. And as a result of that, it led me to moving from Phoenix, Arizona, where I was treated at Ironwood by some very close friends of mine, to Seattle, and to this position.
And we're really thrilled that you're here, because I think what we're going to talk a lot about is something, again, it's near and dear to Beacon's heart, is the survivorship. You know, I started the meeting. Are you a survivor? You know, you might still be in treatment. You might have just gotten diagnosed, some recently diagnosed people here. Would you consider yourself a survivor? We consider you a survivor, you know, and we want to talk a little bit about the survivorship, thrivership kind of concept that, you know, we really do want to put some quality in there. And there's so many other things, even once you go beyond treatment, that you got to start paying attention to also. So we have a whole bunch of different little polls. I think there's one coming up. So the key is we're going to be doing something a little bit different than what we did before. You're still going to use your phone, but we have this idea about survivorship. And what you can do is you can do one of 2 things. You can scan this and open up the poll on your phone, scan the box, or type this into your browser, pollev.com/Beacon Seattle 343. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to do that, and then I'm going to ask you to give me your impressions. And we'll actually be able to see it in real time on the screen, which is very cool, but only if somebody actually does this. So I want you all to do it. Are you all on there now? Okay. You didn't know I was going to make you work while you were here, did you? Okay. So now let's start with the first poll. Whoop. Oh, you already started typing before I even gave you the cue. When you think of the word survivor, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
And you can't say Beyonce. Somebody said that in Nashville last year.
So I love how this is changing as more and more of you might be putting the same word in there. It gets everything bigger. Wow. So overcoming, thriving, being optimistic, strong. It's a little hard to keep up with it. It's a blessing, being happy. It's difficult. There's so many aspects of what being a survivor is all about. It's horrific, it's challenging, a lot to overcome. All right. Thank you for contributing, because I think this is a really unique way to kind of get a feel for the temperature in the room in the sense of where you all are. And so let me go to the next poll. I think is the next poll. Let me see.
It is the next one.
It is. Is there a survivorship clinic or resources available where you receive treatment? Now, Mary, I'm too far away with my regular glasses to read these labels. So, could you read off the results here? Are you able to see the screen?
I can't see. All I can see is the back of people's heads, and you all look great, by the way. You have lovely heads.
Okay, so
And the stage from a
I
distance. So
would
the answer to that is
say
no.
Oh, no. Oh, there
Okay.
you go. Perfect.
Most of you say,
have
I have no idea. Well, go figure. So, no, there's no survivorship clinic. It's the next one down. Yes, but I haven't used it. And it looks like only a few of you have actually used the survivor clinic that you know is even there. So let's talk about survivorship clinics and what they can do and how you can find one. Sorry, Mary, I was thinking you were seeing the actual screen. Sorry. Okay.
Okay.
So I am going to start with Christina this time, and I wanted to have a little bit of dialogue back and forth with all of you, but why is survivorship important to you? You're a nurse, you've been doing this for many years. Why do you find this a meaningful niche?
There's always a quote that comes to mind when I see my patients.
Put your microphone closer. Yeah.
Close enough? No?
Or just, you know what, just hold it. I think that's the easiest thing, because it's weird, if you turn your head, it doesn't work.
Okay, how about that? We got it. I think it's really been an unexpected journey and privilege to meet so many of my patients who really became friends over the years, 100%. I touched their lives, they touched mine in so many different ways. There's always a little saying that comes to mind that there's ordinary and extraordinary, and the difference is extra. And I feel like all my bladder cancer patients are just that extra, just from the complexity of the journey that you face and go through, and as being part of a team, thank God at UCSF, I'm able to see and participate in so many parts of that journey, from the beginning, whether you get your diagnosis, all the way to your survivorship. And I see so many of my patients over the years thrive, and I feel like those are absolutely the success stories that drive all of us, not just the tragedy or just people are dying or suffering, but there's so many success stories that I witnessed over the years.
Thank you. How about you, Mary? Why is survivorship important to you?
I have to remember to unmute myself. It's so good to kind of be here and see everyone. Thanks for being so understanding that I'm on the other side of the country. It's 8 o'clock here, which is like nap time for me, but I'm going to hang in there for you guys. So I've been doing this I've been a nurse practitioner for about 14 years. And what I kind of quickly came to learn in doing this work with patients with not only bladder cancer, but other GU malignancies is that survivorship really, at least when I first started, was kind of an overlooked area in cancer care. And understandably, at the beginning of a cancer experience, so from the time of diagnosis until folks meet with the treatment team and come up with a treatment plan and get that treatment going, we really focus on that. And I think that we on the other side of the street as your providers can sometimes lose sight of all of the other nuanced things that come along with being someone who's been diagnosed with cancer, regardless of where you are in that cancer experience. So it kind of became a little mission of mine to personally be better and do better and listen to my patients so that they could get more holistic and comprehensive care regardless of where they were in their cancer experience. And I'm fortunate enough to have colleagues who are very supportive of that. And in that context, I've been able to take on a couple of survivorship related roles at UNC. So it's kind of become my baby, and it's a privilege to be able to also share in this work with Christina and Barb and Steph and everyone who has gotten kind of survivorship in the spotlight at Beacon. So thrilled to be here, y'all.
I guess it's a little bit more obvious for me because I'm a survivor too. what I found in my journey was that, I went through a lot too, physically, emotionally, scan anxiety, you name it, everything we've talked about today. And so being able to, in this part of my career journey, be able to give back to my fellow cancer patients was like the ultimate thing that I could do for people. And being able to have conversations with you, because I live it too, makes it really real. And I'm honored. It's not easy to be a survivor. All of us have different takes, and it's very personal, our survivorships. Everybody in this room, your survivorship journey has some things in common, but so much of it is personal. And it's how we move forward with it. So I fell into this opportunity. Now I'm grateful every day that I can help support.
Okay, awesome. This is great, because I was going to ask you if I could get the next slide, please. Can it move from the poll? The clicker's not working. Give us a second. Because I was going to ask Barb to sort of elaborate, because the Fred Hutch Survivorship Clinic is all cancers. So there's obviously some common concepts from all cancer patients. And then we'll talk a little bit more, because Mary and Christina have really specific experience with bladder cancer. So what are some of the main things? So, okay, hang on. All right, sorry. The National Cancer Institute, I'm just looking at my notes and it wasn't matching what was on the screen, looks at individuals being cancer survivors from the time of diagnosis through the balance of life, includes during and after treatment and throughout the end of life. So going back to why survivorship is important, let me just go to the next slide, because you had some information about cancer survivorship. So in general,
It's exciting times for many of us in our cancer journeys, because, we're living longer and there's so many more treatments available. According to the National NCI, survivorship is from the day of diagnosis through your entire journey. I'd like to ask in this room, I'm curious, how many people from the moment they were diagnosed felt they were a survivor? Great. How many people are still in treatment and feel like they're a survivor? Okay, so I have to ask this question. How many don't feel like you're a survivor? Okay, so everybody does. So it's in between. The reason I ask that is because, I want to just go off on a slight little tangent really quickly. I hope that's okay. Is that, in many of our institutions, there's a debate as to when patients should be seen in survivorship. And so when it came to Fred Hutch, I was wondering why, this was. And so I've really been pushing that we understand that it's about the patient, not about what we as providers think a survivor is. And so I am saying right now that every conversation I have, I say, ask the patient. They're living longer. People are living with stage 4 cancers for years and years and years. You're survivors with needs. And so, sorry I went on that tangent, but it's really important to me. It emphasizes your health, it emphasizes well-being, your quality of life, whether you're in active treatment or you're cured. And I know you've been hearing these things all day long, but I can't emphasize enough to you that whether you're the patient or the caregiver, you all are survivors.
Yeah. So what is different in bladder cancer? Mary, you got any perspective on why bladder cancer survivorship is a little more focused or unique than just general cancer survivorship?
Yeah, I think it's so nuanced, and especially if you think about the different stages and the different treatments that come along with those stages. So for example, patients with non-muscle invasive bladder cancer have different post-treatment survivorship needs than patients with muscle invasive bladder cancer, and different needs than patients who have advanced or metastatic disease. And I think compared to other solid tumor cancers, the needs are different. We think about things, so patients who end up having to have urostomies, body image issues, patients who have to have surgery or chemotherapy. We think about long-term complications, lifelong surveillance for people with non-muscle invasive bladder cancer. And one thing that I think is really unique that we don't tend to talk about is sexual health for patients who have had bladder cancer diagnosis and treatment. So both men and women is a very unique need, especially those people who've had surgery. And it's all very nuanced and requires multidisciplinary care.
Sure. And Christina?
Yes, I mean, I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly with Mary, and I'm sure a lot of you have so many aspects and experiences in this particular area affecting your life. I think it's one of the most complex processes I've ever seen in my life, being in healthcare. Again, anything from the treatment modalities to, I particularly work in surgical oncology. I think both you and Mary are predominantly in medical oncology. So the whole sexual health and body image issues and ostomy-related long-term complications, Indiana pouch long-term complications, neobladder long-term complications, it is an ongoing process that I feel like each step of the way, even when I have patients who I quote graduate from annual surveillance, we are 10 years post-cystectomy and we haven't had cancer recurrence, I don't ever let these folks out of my sight. I still would like to see you once a year. We still do renal ultrasounds. I want to see your labs. I want to be sure you're not acidotic. I want to be sure you don't have vitamin deficiencies. That ostomy fit can change year to year. So I feel like it's an ongoing, lifelong process, whether you're in survivorship or in treatment.
So when we get to the Fred Hutch Cancer Clinic for survivorship, who gets to come and how do they find out about you? They just look you up on the website and say, oh, I want to go to survivorship?
Well, that's been interesting, is that most patients didn't know that the survivorship clinic existed. And so we've been very active in working with all the different cancer groups to let them know that we're there to support. We're not only seeing patients in the clinic, but also what I'm doing is I'm working with various groups like Bladder, I'm working with sarcoma, I'm working with head and neck cancers, and we're actually helping to start identifying providers in their groups that are interested in survivorship, and we're hoping that we'll be able to train them to help, because obviously I can't see all the patients myself. And so it's an ongoing process. As far as the clinic itself, again, if you live in the state of Washington, it's telemed or in the office. You don't have to have been treated at the Hutch. We see patients three days a week. Each visit is an hour long. And so what happens is that if you decide to have an appointment with me, my team gets all your records. And what we do is we do a deep dive and we learn about everything, your treatment, radiation, doses of therapy, what therapy you're on, where you're at, who your providers were. And then what we do is we look at, what we can do to support. And so we come up with a care plan. And what's really cool with the care plan is it's like a roadmap of things to think about moving forward. And I know I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, but what's really important is everybody here is, affiliated with bladder cancer. It doesn't mean that you can't get breast cancer, colon cancer, or other things. So what we do in the clinic is based on your age, based on therapies that you've had, for example, radiation. If you had radiation, you're at a higher risk for issues with bone density. So, you should be getting DEXA scans, for example. You're at higher risk for secondary cancers. You should be getting a skin exam. Well, as a primary care provider, I can tell you right now, I didn't have time to learn all this. And so what's really cool is that being able to send to your primary care provider a map of, hey, I want to make sure that your patient's vitamin D level is at 50. Hey, I want to make sure that this is going on. Hey, did you do this? Did you do that? Did they have a colonoscopy? Did they have a PAP? Have you checked the CBC, CMP, lipids, thyroid, all these different things, because we need to continue to think about those things along with your treatments. It's not, okay, Barb got melanoma, that I can't get breast cancer next week. So we can't be naive to think that we're not going to do those types of, testing. And so I make sure that when patients leave me, that they know exactly what they need and what the next steps are in the clinic. The other thing is like, if you come into an appointment at Fred Hutch, basically it's all about you. You get an hour. So the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to see all the work we did. You're going to see my notes and stuff. And I'm just going to ask you point blank, how you doing? And then I'm going to say, what can I do to help you? And the hour-long conversation in our survivorship visits go like this. And it goes like this. And there's tears. And there's, the caregiver there. And I talk to the caregiver too, and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And then once we have that conversation and we get real with each other, that's when the healing starts. And so sometimes patients will come to the clinic and they'll go like, I don't know how to ask my oncologist a question. Or they'll say, I don't know how to get, all the advocacy pieces that you all were talking about, we've been talking about for the last 5 hours. That's what I do at the clinic, is I say, okay, what is it you need? Okay, you need a counselor? Okay, I've got resources for a counselor. Hey, you have neuropathy. You need to go see Dr. Hunter. Dr. Hunter's fantastic. Oh, you have brain fog? You need to go see Dr. Shepard. And it goes on and on and on. So it's a very fluid visit. And so have I seen bladder cancer patients in my clinic? Yes. I'm seeing a ton of young patients with cancers right now. I'm seeing a lot of anal cancers, colorectal cancers, tons of breast cancer, bladder, melanoma, sarcoma, and I'll tell you, it's humbling. Because every single person, when they walk in that room, I don't know where it's going to go. But I do know within an hour, they're going to have something signed, sealed, and delivered, and they're going to have a game plan. And the best part about the clinic is, in the past, we didn't follow up patients. I do now. When do you want to see me? Can I see you next week? Okay. If you really need to see me next week, I'll make time. Most patients, 3 months, 6 months, some people a year. But what's so cool is when they come back, I sit back and go, how's it going? And they start with the report card. They go, I did this, I did this, I did this, my PCP did this, my PCP thanks you because you made her life easier. I went to the counselor, and I did this, and I did this, and this, and I go, I think teacher is ready to give you the report card. And the report card for you is an A+, and you have taken ownership in your survivorship. That's the whole key, everybody. Taking that piece and whatever it is that you need to talk to. Sexual dysfunction. Hey, guys, I was in primary care for 30 years, and the guys came to me all the time talking about their ED and all this kind of stuff. And, it's just comfort levels. And what I'm hoping is, with all my patients at the Hutch, that they feel really comfortable with me, they feel heard, and I am not trying to steal you from your oncologist, okay? I don't want to steal you from your oncologist. What I want to do is I want to help your oncologist make sure that you're being heard. That's what an appointment's like at the Hutch.
Nice. So who pays for that?
It's covered by insurance. So what happens is if you call and schedule an appointment with us at the Hutch, our team will go ahead and verify with the insurance companies that it's covered. And then basically what happens is that, we'll just bill as a regular office visit. Probably about 3/4 of my patients are telemed right now, about 1/4 are in office. It's been great.
So this is the listing of some of the offerings that are available. I know Barbie just kind of ran through some of these. Are there any other ones you wanted to just point out to the folks here?
I think the thing that really got me with the last survey was maybe you said you don't know if a survivorship clinic exists. I was talking at another conference about a month ago, and someone was at Sloan Kettering and said, I never heard we had a survivorship program. I'm like, we have a huge program at Sloan Kettering. I think the hardest thing right now is that we just need to get the word on the streets it's there. And I think you should ask your provider, next time you talk to your oncologist, say, hey, do you have a survivorship program? I think you're going to find most of them are going to say, oh yeah, but they don't think about it. You know, and that's the thing. We need to change that thinking that survivorship is as important as active treatment.
Yeah. So Mary and Christina, you know, you incorporate so much of this into your overall patient care. Do you call yourself, like, if I were coming in to talk about these survivorship issues, would you say, well, we're going to have a survivorship visit today? How would you bill for that? What am I, you know, how are you helping me that way? Because you're not specifically a survivorship clinic like what's here at the Fred Hutch. You're in your everyday work.
And I have to say that's an incredible privilege in a way to actually have a survivorship clinic, to call it a survivorship clinic, because unfortunately on the back end of things in clinic and reality is that it's all about billing and coding. And I had to fight for nearly 2 years to actually have a pre-op preparation for my patient's pre-cystectomy that is a 1 hour long visit. They tried to figure out how to do this in 30 minutes, and I said, I can't do this in 30 minutes. There's just no way for me to talk through 2 or 3 different diversions, and then half the time, you know, the materials patients get, they probably tossed it in a closet. They haven't even looked at it by the time they see me. So I never kind of know how the visit goes. And some of the previous slides where we saw that the cup is full of water and I put that ice chip in there, and we were just, I actually can tell in my visit when I lost you 100%, and we just stop. But this hour-long survivorship clinic, the only way I think, for example, I can do it is if we have 4 or 5 different issues, then actually I see you next week and we come back, and today we are addressing your ostomy and your nutrition, and tomorrow we are addressing your ED and mental health issues. There's no way for me to, for example, fit that all in one visit. So at UCSF, we don't have quote an official survivorship clinic. I feel like I'm the survivorship clinic, sort of. But I also have no idea how to make an hour-long visit once you're in a follow-up period and out of that 90-day global post-surgical period that gives us a lot of freedom. I can talk to you every day. 90 days is 90 days. After, on the 91st day, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. So Mary, what about you down at UNC?
Down here, so far away. So we don't have a formal bladder cancer survivorship clinic yet. It is a work in progress. I'm working on it all the time. But I see a lot of patients who are post-treatment, and those are essentially, you know, the same as a survivorship visit. And there's different models of survivorship care. I think the one that Barb runs is absolutely fascinating. There's lots of different models of survivorship clinics, and different clinics work for different institutions, and it depends on, you know, which what barriers there are at specific institutions. But at UNC we do have survivorship clinics for other cancers. I am the director of our testicular cancer survivorship clinic, another group of patients who has very unique needs given their age, and I'm working on a bladder cancer one, but it's certainly a work in progress. So now it's just, as far as the billing, it just gets billed as a regular return visit paid for by insurance.
So, you know, and if you don't have one, ask. You know, if you need to know more and you need to have, you know, that additional information, see about getting extra time wherever it is that you're being seen if you're not able to come to Fred Hutch. But, you know, you have to ask for that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and I want to say that a lot of major academic medical centers, they actually have survivorship wellness programs. You might never hear about it because I think it's very much not spoken about. Clinicians don't refer patients. So at UCSF2, we have a very well-established survivorship clinic, but includes every type of cancer and group sessions, and they have all the resources that one can ask for, but it's not bladder cancer specific, right?
Yeah, so. Any other comments, Barb?
Yeah, and that's what's so exciting about, our goals at the Hutch, is that we know like not one survivorship model works for all groups, and we're not going to get everybody to play in the sandbox together and learn that really fast. So what we've done is we've come up with all these different hybrid models, and one is like, the bladder specific, sarcoma specific, and working with those groups. We're also piloting some other programs. One example is the gentleman who asked about stage 1 and stage 2. I'm hoping to be working with Dr. Bird. He's with melanoma, and he would like us to see, my group to see, which is me, stage 1 and stage 2 melanoma patients. They basically have surgery and they're put it out. And you're right. You worry about recurrence. You get anxious. When you hear the diagnosis of melanoma, bladder cancer, those kinds of things, life has changed. So if that works really well, then we'll go back to the institution and try to do it with more groups. But honestly, if you guys want change, I'm going to say it. Let your institutions know. I beg people, because what I hear in meetings, and I'm in charge of program development as well, and I've worked in developing practices across the country, including mine, is that the feedback from the patient is like huge. And so if you have a great experience and you're able to share that, it gets up the pipeline, then it's going to get more attention. And so patients will ask me all the time, like, what can I do to help you, because I'm really upset that I didn't know about it. I said, you know what, write a letter. Say, hey, why did I have to find out about it on my own? I had a great experience. And this one patient said as much as like every single patient that's diagnosed should be told about the clinic, and was really angry that she wasn't told. And I said, hey, take it up the pipeline, and then let's talk about it. But you have more power than you think. You really do. But you have to step up and say, these are the things that we want. I believe that with all my heart. I've seen it. It works.
So let's change gears just a little bit, because Barb, you put together this nice little collage of surviving and thriving. So Mary, give me an example of, like, without naming a name, but give me an example of a patient that, like, you're just amazed at how they thrive, even with this diagnosis. You think of anybody?
I love the question, and I think it's also a slightly difficult one to answer, not only because I have so many patients who just amaze me every day, but because everyone thrives differently. I think we think about the word thrive, and there's some implication that people are out there carrying the torch for bladder cancer, and it kind of becomes all-consuming in their life's mission. And I think that is one way to thrive in the context of having this diagnosis. And I have several patients who I work really closely with as part of the North Carolina chapter, as part of our local support group, who are thriving in that way, who are have become advocates for early detection and better treatments and those types of things. But I also have the same degree of admiration for my patients who choose to thrive quietly and privately, and really only talk about their cancer experience when they're in those four walls with me, because it is such an intimate and personal thing to go through. So from everyone that's running marathons to my patients who only talk about it when they're in those four walls with me, are all thriving in their own unique way.
Yeah. You have anything to add, Christina?
I have so many years of stories to add. I think, in my mind, if we are able to kind of reframe your perception and your new norm, sort of where you are, and whether that's we fixed a leaking ostomy that drove both of us crazy, or you are emailing me sending me a postcard from Italy, or as we talked in Nashville, getting a 6 a.m. text message from my patient that he woke up with an erection, So I think I fully agree with Mary that how people embrace this journey is very unique. And I get so many cards and so many random acts and gifts of kindness, and also, as in the previous session, we're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder and how people grow from trauma or grief, basically. I personally went through, as we were saying, traumas are very different in your lives, and PTSD can stem from all of it. I lost my lifetime partner back in 2018 to a very sudden, unfortunate situation in Germany where I had to fly home and basically pick up a healthy 41-year-old in a coffin. And I was gone for months out of UCSF. And so the amount of support and love that came out from the bladder cancer community to just try to make a square roll kind of thing to survive that, it really has touched my life in ways that, like, I don't even know how I ended up here, but I feel like that was one of the purposes of I never looked for this job at UCSF. The job literally fell in my lap few years before that. So I don't believe there's incidents or accidents. Like I literally felt like life was paving my way also to survive in a way that I needed support.
Do you have any good examples, Barb?
The two examples that, were just shared are just fantastic. I think of a patient that I'm seeing right now, and he's 38 years old, and he has a very rare form of stomach cancer. And he's still going through immunotherapy, and they don't have any studies to know, like, what his prognosis is or anything like that. And he's just a beautiful man with two beautiful kids. And it was interesting, when I saw him about a month ago, I asked him how things were going, and he said, he's just enjoying being able to be there with his two sons, take a hike. He goes, I didn't really care before, but he goes, every time I get to spend time with them, it's great. He goes, my wife used to leave and he'd have to babysit the kids. And he goes, I used to hate it. And they still drive me crazy. Because I just love it. I love every day, every moment. And it's a great perspective. It grounds you.
Yeah, you can probably all agree with me. Cancer changes you. Some for the better, some not so much, and some you need to kind of work through all the stuff that comes along with it. But what's fascinating is that Mary and Christina have been part of this, and they've really pushed this and really feel it's important. So Mary, why don't you give us a little background about how this has been evolving over time? We started with this task force where you all would meet collectively at our think tank and talk about survivorship. You want to give us a little background?
Yeah, so I admittedly was a pest. Very open about how I just, when I want things done, I can be a little bit of a pest, but it's because I'm the middle child and no one ever listens to me, guys. So thank you for your attention this evening, finally. I think really survivorship came into focus with the team at BCAN when, after we had Dr. Deb Mayer, who was one of my first mentors at UNC. She's an outstanding, world-renowned nursing colleague who at one point was the director of survivorship for the NCI. And she was our keynote speaker one year at the think tank, and it put survivorship on the big stage, and it hadn't been before. So that kind of got my gears going to say, okay, how can we activate this and continue this momentum to get the folks who come to this meeting, so that the healthcare professionals, the researchers, the patients, and their caregivers more engaged with this important topic. So we had a breakout session at the think tank in 2022, and prior to that meeting, we sent out a survey to all the folks who were going to be participating So whether it was healthcare providers or patients and caregivers, and we kind of identified how different groups view the most important survivorship needs, and then kind of narrowed down how we could potentially shape the future of survivorship-focused research. And then in that session, we kind of narrowed our focus a bit. And after that, we kind of named ourselves the Survivorship Task Force. And since then, we've met not only at the think tank, but meet about every 3 to 4 months virtually for those who can make it, to kind of hash out ideas about how we, BCAN, as an organization, can do more research in this arena, and bring survivorship more to the forefront of everyone's mind.
Yeah. And you got Christina involved. Christina got to be part of the think tank. And then, it was a natural fit for you both to be sort of co-chairing this whole initiative. And why did you get involved, Christina?
Because you didn't stop bugging me.
Well, we know it needs to get done. And you know what I said? When you want something done, you ask a busy woman.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
Pretty
But
on
yeah,
brand stuff.
I don't even know how I got involved. I think it was, as you were saying, it was just such a natural fit of addressing needs that were coming into my attention literally daily from our clinic visits and folks. And those of you who are not familiar, think tank is the scientific arm of BCAN. We meet once a year and usually rotates from coast to coast. And I want to say I think it's the best and the most fabulous in the country, and probably, I'd say, in the world, working in this area. And the next meeting is in San Diego. And I think a lot of the ideas, both from a scientific perspective and a social perspective, they're all kind of coming out of these scientific meetings.
And you know what drives a lot of what we bring to the think tank is you and what your needs are. And so prior to coming here, you should have received an email from Patricia Rios. And many of you did complete the survey, but I'm going to give you a chance to complete it if you didn't do it already. But let's do another word cloud. Which is the most important issue to you as a survivor? Put in a word. Let's see what it says. You got to go back to that poll everywhere thing. So you didn't know I was going to pick your brains while you were here. Get some feedback. Yeah, I guess so. Right, if you just hit refresh, it should go to the next one. Patricia, can you go back to the QR code? Is that going to screw it up if we do it that way? Here's the QR code again. Sorry. Can you put in the URL, thepollev.com? BCAN Seattle 343. Yep. All right, well, let's see what we can get. Can we, yeah, okay. Important issues: family, quality, comfort, breakthroughs, living long, attitude, possibility of recurrence. Nice. So we'll talk about breakthroughs tomorrow. Let's talk a little bit about one of the issues I think that does come up often in survivorship is dealing with side effects, right? You get a lot of those questions overall in cancer, and certainly you deal a lot, and Mary deal a lot with now you've had a diversion, or now you have this process and you're having complications as a result of it, specifically because you're focused on urologic issues. Can I get the next poll question? Let's see. If you've had side effects from any of your treatments, we wanted to find out, does your doctor ask you about that? Or do you feel like you have to bring it up? Or I don't have side effects, or I do have side effects, but I don't talk about them. And I think there's one that says I don't have side effects. Well, this is encouraging because it seems like most of you say that your healthcare providers are asking. So that's great. But then a bunch of you seem to have to bring it up yourselves. Pardon? Oh.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
Oh, there it is.
Oh. After hearing from Dr. Walker, I knew I had more poll questions in here. Which mental health emotional issue that we just talked about is most concerning for you? You have to pick one. Looks like fear of recurrence is the winner here in terms of the big ghoul in the room or the monster under the bed. The fear of recurrence seems to be the current theme. Do you see that across cancers, Barb?
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest conversations that we have is how do you work around that whole idea of did I beat it or is it going to come back? Or am I ever going to get without evidence of disease? Yeah, it's a huge one, and I think it's natural,
Yeah.
you know, for all of us.
I think one of the biggest challenges or sort of the clinical complexity in these survivorship visits is that you are discussing scan results, and not everybody's results are great. I think although we are living longer, also technology and biology has gone a lot further. So I feel like we keep adding pieces to the puzzle at this point, for example, at UCSF. So it's not only enough that we have clear scans and your blood work is great, but now we have to have a negative cell-free DNA test that microscopically we're not picking up anything. So I feel like there's 7 puzzle pieces before we can say and, you know, just kind of take a breath and we are in the clear. And I feel like this is just going to keep on evolving as biology and immunotherapy and everything else is evolving. But survivorship visits are not always great news, right? So we have to learn how to sit with whatever news we need to give.
Right. So Barb, can you comment about the State of Survivorship survey?
Yeah, so this was done by the National Cancer Coalition in 2023, and it was like on here 1810 survivors and then 535 caregivers. And again, the greatest thing was fear of recurrence and grief, appearance, you know, how this affects family members, relationships. And so it kind of goes along with, you know, what we last discussed. I think it's one of those things where it's also evolving too. So if you're, you know, 1 year status post-diagnosis or treatment, I think you're really going to be focused in on the recurrence. If you're 10 years out, you know, you're still struggling with relationships sometimes because things aren't the same. So this is a really great survey. If you have a chance to check it out, it's like a 52-page survey, and it hits everything you can imagine related to survivorship. And what's really cool about the survey is that what you see from the patient perspective is a little bit different than the caregiver's perspective. So, for example, patient will say, the doctor answers all my questions. I feel so happy with my provider. The caregiver says, they don't. It's really, really interesting to see those dynamics, and you can see how conversations could get really interesting. So I would encourage you to check out this survey. It's available online.
So maybe you can share a link with us and we can send that out in, follow up
Yep.
to everybody. So if they're interested in looking at it, I think that'd be really helpful. But we're doing our own sort of data gathering. So if you haven't already done the survey, you can scan this code and open it up on your phone, and you can do it during happy hour, or you can do it in dinner, or do it later, and, give us the feedback, because that would be an enormous help to us. I think that, we really are trying to get some thoughts and opinions so that we can really refine our survivorship tools. We have some good ideas, but we're always open to additional feedback and input. And the next poll question: which of the 3 physical issues is most concerning to you? And it looks like there's only 2 on here. Oh, okay. There we go. Side effects like fatigue and pain, insomnia, lymphedema, and nausea seems to be the biggest one. Incontinence is absolutely an issue. And I can't remember now which was the third one. What's the third one on your phone? Sexual function.
That's got to be up there.
It's not showing up on the screen, though. Well, this is all, we get to keep all this data, so this is all very useful for where we're going coming up. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit in terms of, do you want to do a brief synopsis of what's covered in the
Really
cancer
brief, I
ship? Yeah.
promise. It'll be so brief. Because I think we talked about a lot of it.
Yeah, we did.
Again, it's the physical, emotional, social, how we can support you on your journey. It's very catered individually to what you want to accomplish as well. I think the most important thing, again, too, along with that is making sure that we're covering all of your other preventative needs and making sure that your care providers are aware of the long-term effects of your treatment and what they should be watching for with certain therapies, so that they're on top of it in case you go in for a visit with some symptoms and they go, I think you're fine. Well, you may not be fine. The other thing is, what's rewarding to me is the next steps for support, being able to refer out into the community and out to my providers at Fred Hutch for, pelvic floor therapy, for example, dealing with, whatever needs that they have, counseling and things like that.
Okay, good. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit just because I want to make sure that Mark Story has a chance. Patricia, if you could text Mark and see if he can come on in. We want to be sure to cover Bladder Cancer Awareness Month before we go to happy hour. There he is. He said, oh, I can't see. The lights are so bright. I feel like a movie star. There's so many lights on here. So I just wanted to, let's finish up here and then we'll have you come on up and we'll get to your stuff. So I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit. But, we're really looking for what kinds of things should go into a bladder cancer survivorship plan. We're going to be developing a little one-pager, something that clinics across the country can use, that, Christina and Mary can have in their urology departments. And then Barb can say, okay, here's the plan that works for bladder cancer. I'm going to make sure I'm checking off all of these items. So these are all things we're asking about in the survey and really trying to get your opinions. So do you have a clear understanding of what your follow-up visits entail? That's a question that we're just wondering, because not everybody feels confident that they know what's next. They're out there. So looks like all of you do. This is good. That's a really good thing. A few of you don't. Okay. Give it a second.
There are the percentages. Nice.
Does that fit what what you think?
Yeah, I think so. I also believe it's oftentimes I will get questions, are you going to send me an email when my next blood test is due, or when is my next cystoscopy or whatnot? And I do think that the clinical staff at the time of you checking out, et cetera, those are very important that it's all set up. I also think it got a little bit more complicated, although telehealth and telemedicine is wonderful, and it gives us access to so many people who, let's say, just drive 10 hours down to UCSF to have their surgery, and then, we are taking care of them long term. But some of it, we really got to pay attention how a lot of those charts are signed out accordingly to clinical staff. So actually the right appointment gets scheduled with the right provider, right tests are ordered at the time of your visit, et cetera. And I think a lot of institutions have figured out how to do those, what we call wrap-up sections at the end of your visit. But if you're not sure, it has to be communicated, and also copies to your primary care provider. I'm very meticulous sending notes to your care team, so all of us are on the same page.
Yeah. So, a few things you can control yourself going forward, keeping up with your health checks, control your blood pressure, cholesterol, because just because you survived bladder cancer doesn't mean you couldn't die from a heart attack. You got to be working on this other stuff too. If you're a smoker, quit smoking. Those are some of the things that sometimes go into survivorship plans. We were talking about that earlier. If you're a smoker, it's good to quit smoking. We're going to talk about nutrition more in detail tomorrow. Exercise, as you saw in the prehabilitation session, addressing your emotional needs, managing the stress that comes with this diagnosis. Alcohol, substance abuse. Boy, I feel like I'm just recapping everything that we did today.
Before
We talked
happy
about all
hour,
of
right?
these. We're going to go to happy hour next anyway. That's right. But it's a fun happy hour. And then the last thing, which will be important, sleep is critical for the physical, emotional well-being, and immune function, and coping. So, Mary, give us a quick recap of where we're going in 2024. What are we trying to do here?
Well, where I'm going right now is to the airport at RDU, because y'all keep talking about happy hour.
Yeah.
Get on a plane and come to Seattle for happy hour with you guys. Just kidding, kind of. But there are so many amazing people in Beacon, Christina, Barb, patients, caregivers are working so hard to get new resources tailored to survivorship at the forefront of Beacon. And we have a lot going on, but it's going to be great once it's all done. The first hurdle that we tackled with the very generous many opinions of many wonderful people was defining bladder cancer survivorship, which I think we have a slide for at the end. We're working on developing things like bladder cancer survivorship fact sheets, so like an overview of what that means, and then other bladder cancer specific fact sheets. So these fact sheets exist for other things like palliative care and ostomies and those types of things. We really want ones that are tailored to survivorship specific needs. And something that I'm really excited about is on Beacon's website, we're going to have a dedicated space where you can go to find these resources. So there's things that already exist that we're just going to move to a different part of the website, and also a lot of things in development that we're going to add there. So survivorship can kind of have its own landing space on the Beacon website, in addition to kind of fine-tuning kids and then disseminating all of this information out to our fellow colleagues across the country who will eventually get it out to their patients. It's a marathon and not a sprint, and I'm grateful for everyone who is helping make this happen.
So we've been talking a lot about it, and we have a draft of survivorship. Bladder cancer survivorship embodies the holistic, patient-centered, and comprehensive care, engaging collaboration among diverse healthcare professionals across phases of the cancer journey or experience. This approach acknowledges the intricate and individualized experience of each patient, addressing not only the diagnostic outcomes and follow-up schedules, but also encompassing health promotion, disease prevention, treatment-related side effects, and the emotional well-being of both patients and their carers. I think these are some ideas that we've had. In the follow-up survey that we're going to ask you to do, we're going to ask you for, hey, what do you think about this? Do you have thoughts? Is there something we missed? So we want to leave this out in the ether so that it's something that you're going to think about and you'll provide some feedback for us, because this is our goal, is to define this a little bit more accurately. You've heard all these wonderful presentations. There have been an element of survivorship in all of them, and it's addressed all of these different aspects. So if there's something that we're missing, you need to let us know. But this will be follow-up. We'll be asking you questions about that. And just to kind of wrap up a little bit, let me move ahead. I'm not pressing the right button. So we will definitely be looking for some feedback. We can definitely open it up to questions if you have any questions. This is a work in progress, and we are going to ask you for input. So when we send out a survey, please do it. It doesn't take long. And Petros, Dr. Grievous, it's a pleasure to see you.
Great to see you too. I don't have a microphone, but I can.
There's a mic right in the front, right there.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
First of all, wonderful panel. Thank you so much for doing this, all four of you. Mary, we miss you. We want you to come to Seattle and visit us. We love you. And great presentation. Thanks for putting this together. Such an important topic. And to your point, being busy in our day-to-day life as oncologists, we should not forget this important aspect of survivorship. And I love the idea. It starts on day one, right, on day of diagnosis, and carries forward. And our job is to make this a long, long journey, also with quality of life. My question to you is, how, as medical oncologist myself, how can I better partner with all of you to advocate for this concept of survivorship to become more visible, even at the NCI, National Cancer Institute level, and have like a formal, let's say, award of the cancer centers that they should have a program, should be like a mandatory component of cancer care. How can we raise voices and, advocacy, for example, to make it like a more formal part of cancer care, which I think is becoming that way. But how can we scale it up, even in not academic cancer centers? How can we pull resources to make it happen? Thanks again. Yeah. Great talk.
I liked your concept that, your goal is to keep people around longer so the survivorship issue has a longer life on there. So Mary, how do you think we need to be doing this to make this a bigger part of overall cancer across the board, but specifically focused again on bladder cancer?
Thank you, Petros. Good to see you. I think just continuing to do work like this, so the folks in healthcare who are really passionate about this, continuing to speak up and raise our voices, educate our colleagues. I enjoy spending time educating like my fellow nurse practitioners and PAs and my physician colleagues about what exactly goes into survivorship care and what that should look like. And I think that creates a ripple effect. But what I also think makes a big impact, if not a bigger impact, is the voice of the people who are actually living the experience. And if that means y'all meaning patients and caregivers, going to Hill Day with the team at BCAN and talking about survivorship care needing to be a priority for funding for the NCI, that lawmakers and people in positions of power tend to listen to people who are living these experiences, and sometimes they can sympathize if they've had a loved one who's had a cancer experience. So I would encourage all of you to use your voice, because it really does matter and make a ripple effect.
Barbara, Christina, anything to add?
I think it would be, I know that in our previous think tank last year in Washington, there were some voices talking to lawmakers or Congress or certain people with influence. Because from a clinical perspective, as Petra was saying, we need these survivorships clinic not only because people live longer, because there's so many issues and quality of life concerns that everybody has. And if institutions are giving a hard time to clinicians actually to do their work because I'm blocked in a 30-minute slot, I feel like every cancer survivor should be allowed to have an hour-long visit for your survivorship visit. Like, that's just not even a question. But how do you actually translate that into clinical practice? There are definitely roadblocks that need a lot more work.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this or not. Jill Biden was at Fred Hutch a few months ago, and she spoke with various parties there, including my supervisor, Dr. Baker. And survivorship is one of her big pushes to this, death of Bo. And so she's trying to make efforts. So I'm excited about that. I think it's getting in the forefront. I'm a boots to the ground girl, and I believe that if people are in meetings, like oncologists are in meetings, and they can just mention to their fellow providers, hey, there is survivorship, there's a clinic, there's, they want to collaborate with you. If you're interested in it, reach out. We want to help, but it's going to take an effort of just people remembering it. And I get oncologists because, they want to save lives. That's what it's all about. It's saving lives. But during that process, again, because we're living so much longer now, just remembering that we're out there.
Okay. We have time for one more question.
Sorry, let me just on one more thing. You guys know those annoying surveys that you get at the end of your clinical visit? How was your visit? Mm-hmm. Yeah, those surveys are very important. They go into people's files, they go to the department, they go into press gain evaluations. So actually your voice is super important. It's actually all accounted for every one of those surveys.
Our last question of the day.
Yeah, thank you. Not so much a question, maybe to help you wrap this up and put a bow on it. But thank you so much for all four of you. I learned, number one, you want something done, you give it to a busy woman. That's number one. Number two, I learned what a survivorship clinic was. You gave me a lot of definition of that. And you also, I'm nearly new in my diagnosis, and, survivorship to me was defined as, like, what's my diagnosis? Is it T1, T2? Is it this? Is it that? Like, how much longer am I going to live? What do the statistics say? And now you've expanded, this whole concept, to help me digest that this is a lifelong process that I'm entering. And I love the structure and the holistic nature that you're creating for survivors. I did take advantage, just as a plug for BCAN Survivor to Survivor Network, I did take advantage of that once I was clear about my diagnosis, because I wanted to be hooked up with somebody who had my diagnosis so I could track with them. And he was my my survivor clinic for a long time before I even heard about you guys. And that was very helpful. The wounded healer, he was me. I hope to be him 8 years from now, basically in continuous remission. But the last thing I'd like to point out, as you guys run this clinic, there's all these definitions. I have cancer. That's what I first came to the conclusion. And then I thought, then I'll be a cancer survivor. And then I'll be in remission, and then I'll be cancer-free. And, it's like, what category do I put myself in? Because it's really, when you come out of the closet with your friends and family, it's really important the words you use, because they get very reactive to it. And so what you're also doing is giving me a little more language to use, but when we talk about what's one of your biggest concerns, you're right. I didn't put identity at all. I mean, my biggest concern is to live longer. But identity is an issue, and like when I tell people I'm a cancer survivor, I guess that's where I ended up today. Not in remission, not cancer free, and I'll end with that.
We'll do this if you can go really fast, because I want to make sure Mark has a chance, and then we have dinner. So, and happy hour.
I'm between you and happiness of the happy hour. So it's more a note. And this is, my wife is treated in UW and Ferrach. And basically, they're not treating the disease. They're treating my wife. And I think that this is the concept that encapsulates many things you said in the last amazing presentation that you had about what you said. They're treating my wife and not the disease. They're not focusing on the small thing, but about the human being. And I think this is great, actually, to see, to be in this, that this is the healthcare she gets, this is the care, the treatment she's getting. And I think it encapsulates, I'm not going to the name survivor, but treating the person and not the disease. That's it. Food, sorry.
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Mary, for joining us from North Carolina, and Barb for coming down to be with us today, and Christina for flying in.